It was late, and the city's skyline shimmered like the teeth of a sleeping beast. Sarah stood on the edge of the sidewalk, her phone dead and the rain relentless. She was just about to give up and walk when a taxi emerged from the mist, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Relief washed over her as she flagged it down. The cab rolled to a stop, the wipers rhythmically slapping away the rain. The driver, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a thin smile, glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She hesitated for a moment before climbing into the back seat, shaking off the rain. "Where to?" His voice was gravelly, almost as if it hadn't been used in a long time. "Just take me home," she replied, giving him her address. The cab lurched forward, merging into the nearly deserted streets. The interior of the cab was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Sarah shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her. She tried to distract herself by watching the rain, but the city outside seemed distorted, unfamiliar. Every shadow looked like it was moving, every corner hiding something sinister. The driver didn't say another word, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Sarah felt a growing unease, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. She glanced at the rearview mirror and caught his eyes staring back at her, a predatory glint in them. She quickly looked away, her pulse quickening. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. The cityscape outside became stranger, the buildings unfamiliar, the streets darker. She looked down at her phone, forgetting it was dead, just needing something to focus on. When she looked up, they were no longer in the city. The surroundings had transformed into an endless expanse of fog-covered forest. "Hey, this isn't the way to my place," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The driver didn't respond. The silence was deafening, oppressive. "Excuse me, where are you taking me?" she asked, louder this time, panic creeping into her voice. The driver finally turned his head slightly, the thin smile returning. "Home," he said simply. Sarah's heart raced. She grabbed the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. She tried the other side, but it was locked too. The cab sped up, the trees outside rushing past in a blur. Desperation took over. She pounded on the divider. "Let me out. Now." The driver chuckled, a low, menacing sound that echoed in the confined space. "You're already home," he said cryptically. The road ahead twisted and turned, the fog growing thicker. Sarah's mind raced, trying to find a way out. She spotted a small, glimmering object on the floor. A key. Without thinking, she lunged for it, her fingers closing around the cold metal. She jammed it into the door's lock, praying it would work. The lock clicked open. She threw herself against the door, tumbling out of the moving cab and onto the wet, cold ground. She rolled to a stop, bruised and breathless. The cab screeched to a halt ahead of her, the driver stepping out slowly, almost leisurely. Sarah scrambled to her feet, pain shooting through her body. She ran, the force closing in around her, branches clawing at her clothes. She could hear the driver's footsteps behind her, calm and deliberate. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out. She collapsed by a large, gnarled tree, sobbing. The footsteps grew louder, closer. She looked up and saw him standing there, a dark silhouette against the fog. "This is where you belong," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "You'll never leave." As he stepped closer, Sarah's vision blurred. The world around her darkened, the cold seeping into her very soul. The last thing she saw was the driver's thin smile, his eyes empty and hollow. Sarah was never seen again. The city continued to shimmer in the distance, unaware of the secrets hidden in the foggy depths of the forest. The taxi, its driver always searching for the next fare, vanished into the night, waiting for another lost soul to flag it down.